1. Let me tell you about this 1966 Ford Mustang I found on Craigslist. I've got to be honest with you. This one's a bit of a project, but hear me out. For $8,500, you're looking at a classic 66 Mustang Coupe with a V8 engine and automatic transmission. The odometer shows 105,000 miles, but it's rolled over, so take that with a grain of salt. The body's sporting a red paint job, which could be pretty sweet if it's in decent shape. Now here's the real talk. This beauty isn't running at the moment and hasn't been for quite some time. The seller's upfront about it being a project car, so you'll need to roll up your sleeves and put in some work. But hey, that's part of the fun, right? On the bright side, the seller claims there's no rust, which is a huge plus for a car this age. It's got power steering, a clean California title, and even the original black plates that match the title. That's some cool historical value right there. The condition is listed as fair, so don't expect a showroom-ready ride. But if you're looking for a classic Mustang to restore and make your own, this could be a solid starting point. Just remember, you'll be investing more than just the purchase price to get this pony galloping again. So, what do you think? Are you ready to take on this 66 Mustang project and bring it back to its former glory? It might be a challenge, but imagine cruising down the street in this classic once you've worked your magic. 2. Let's talk about this 1981 Chevy El Camino that's currently up for grabs at $9,500. This unique car-truck hybrid is a real head-turner, and it's got some serious potential for the right buyer. Under the hood, we're looking at a 5.7-liter 350 SBC V8 engine, which is a solid power plant for this classic. The seller mentions it's got a mild choppy cam, new lifters, and springs, with a double timing chain setup. They've also thrown in a new Proform double-pumper 650 CFM carburetor, which should give this El Camino some nice throttle response. The exterior is finished in black, and it's riding on some sweet SS Monte Carlo rims with brand new staggered tires. Now, I've got to be upfront. There are a couple of dents in the tailgate and right rear quarter panel, so it's not perfect. But hey, that's part of the charm with these older rides, right? Inside, you'll find a new interior, which is always a plus. They've added some nice touches like dual-speaker door panels, a B&M floor shifter, and an EDID steering column. The stereo install kit and door speakers are ready for you to set up your perfect sound system. Now let's talk about the condition. The seller lists it as good and mentions it's a solid car. However, they're honest about it needing some work, particularly with the wiring. The odometer is broken, so the 65,000 miles shown might not be accurate. But on the bright side, they've included a bunch of new parts like an aluminum 4-core radiator, dual electric fans, and rebuilt front control arms. Performance-wise, the seller says it runs good and shifts firm, which is promising. The dual exhaust should give it a nice rumble too. So what's the verdict? This El Camino isn't a show car, but it's got a lot of potential. It's a project, sure, but with most of the major work already done. If you're looking for a classic El Camino to cruise in and gradually improve, this could be a great starting point. Just be prepared to put in some elbow grease to sort out those final details. What do you think? Is this the kind of project you'd love to tackle? 3. We're checking out a 1973 Mercury Monterey that's currently listed on Craigslist for $3,000. This big, beautiful coupe is a real blast from the past, and it's got a pretty interesting story to boot. First off, let's talk about the basics. We're looking at a V8-powered rear-wheel drive coupe with a clean title. The odometer shows 98,000 miles, which is pretty low for a car of this vintage. Now, here's the kicker. This Monterey was previously owned by an elderly lady and has been a one-owner vehicle its entire life. That's pretty rare for a nearly 50-year-old car. The seller describes the condition as good and claims it's all original and great inside and out. They also mention it has good tires, which is always a plus. The exterior is finished in green, which was a popular color choice back in the 70s and really suits this classic Mercury. Now, I've got to be honest with you. We don't have a ton of details about the car's mechanical condition or any potential issues. The transmission is listed as other, so we're not sure if it's automatic or manual. it would be wise to ask the seller for more information and, if possible, get a thorough inspection before making a decision. That being said, for $3,000, this Mercury Monterey could be a great find for the right buyer. These big 70s coupes are becoming increasingly rare, especially in original condition. If it's as good as the seller claims, it could be a fantastic cruiser or a solid starting point for a restoration project. Remember, though, that any car from 1973 is going to need some TLC, even if it's been well maintained. Be prepared for potential issues that come with older vehicles, like rubber components that might need replacing, or electrical gremlins that could pop up. All in all, if you're in the market for a classic 70s cruiser with a cool backstory, this 1973 Mercury Monterey might be worth checking out. Just make sure to do your due diligence before making a purchase. What do you think? Is this the kind of classic that gets your motor running? 4. We're taking a look at a 1973 Ford Mustang convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $15,000 OBO. This blue beauty is definitely worth a closer look, so let's dive in. First off, we're dealing with a V8-powered pony car here, specifically a 302 cubic inch engine paired with an automatic transmission. The seller describes it as a nice driver quality car, which is a fair assessment for a classic that's meant to be enjoyed on the road. Now let's talk about the good stuff. This Mustang comes loaded with features like factory air conditioning, power steering, power disc brakes, and a power top with a glass window. It's also sporting a front spoiler and factory tinted glass, which adds to its appeal. The metallic blue glow exterior paired with the blue deluxe interior sounds like a stunning combination. The odometer shows 49,354 miles, but the seller notes it has rolled over, so the actual mileage is unknown. That's pretty common for cars of this age, so no big surprise there. Cool detail is that it comes with a MARTI report, which can provide some interesting historical information about the car's original build. Now let's be real here. The seller is upfront about the car not being perfect, describing it as a great looker and a super nice driver quality car. This suggests that while it's in good condition overall, it might have some imperfections or areas that could use some attention. That's pretty typical for a nearly 50-year-old car, even one that's been well maintained. The seller seems eager to move this Mustang, mentioning that the price has been reduced and that they need the space. This could be an opportunity for a savvy buyer to negotiate a good deal. All in all, this 1973 Mustang convertible seems like a solid choice for someone looking for a classic pony car to cruise in and enjoy. It's not a show car, but it's not trying to be. It's a driver quality classic with some nice features and what sounds like a great color combination. If you're in the market for a fun, classic Mustang convertible that you can drive and enjoy without worrying about keeping it in pristine condition, this could be the one for you. Just make sure to give it a thorough inspection and maybe a test drive before making a decision. What do you think? Is this the kind of classic Mustang that gets your heart racing? 5. We're checking out a 1982 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $7,250. This two-door beauty is a prime example of early 80s American muscle, and it's got some interesting features that make it worth a closer look. Under the hood, we've got a 307 Oldsmobile V8 paired with an automatic transmission. The seller reports that the car has about 111,000 miles on the odometer, but the engine's only seen about 70,000 miles, which is a nice bonus. It's always good to have some extra life in that power plant. Now let's talk about condition. The seller describes it as good, and based on the details provided, it seems like this Cutlass has been well maintained. About 10,000 miles ago, the previous owner, who had the car for 20 years, did a significant amount of work on it. We're talking new brake components all around, fresh transmission fluid and filter, a new AC pump and evaporator, new shocks, water pump and hoses. They even replaced the doors and rear bumper with rust-free California parts. That's some serious dedication. The exterior is white, which is a classic color for these Cutlasses. It's riding on aftermarket 15 mag rims, but the seller is also including the original set of 14 factory rally rims with caps and rings. That's a nice touch for those who prefer the stock look. Inside, you'll find some modern amenities like a Pioneer stereo with CD player, tilt steering, AC, and rear defrost. The seller is also throwing in some extras like a car cover, spare tire and jack, and the owner's manual. Now I've got to be honest, with any car this age, you're likely to encounter some issues. The seller doesn't mention any specific problems, but it's always wise to give a thorough inspection before making a purchase. That said, given the amount of work that's been done and the relatively low mileage, this Cutlass seems to be in better shape than many of its contemporaries. All in all, this 1982 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme looks like a solid choice for someone wanting a classic American car from the early 80s. It's not perfect, but it seems well cared for and ready to cruise. At $7,250, it could be a good value, especially considering all the recent work and included extras. So, what do you think? Is this the kind of classic that gets your motor running? Would you cruise around town in this piece of Oldsmobile history? 6. We're diving into a real gem, a 1978 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $12,500. Let me tell you, this one's a real time capsule. First off, we're looking at a two-door coupe in gray with a white vinyl top and black interior. Now get this, it's only got 71,415 original miles on the clock. That's incredibly low for a car that's over 4 decades old. Under the hood, we've got the original V8, a 260 cubic inch engine paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission. The seller says it runs great, and I'm inclined to believe them given how well preserved this Cutlass seems to be. Now, let's talk condition. The seller describes it as excellent, and from the details provided, it sounds like they're not exaggerating. We're talking original paint, interior, vinyl top, and even the Oldsmobile steel rally wheels. The chrome is in great condition, and there are no tears or cracks in the upholstery. The dashboard, headliner, and sun visors are described as perfect. That's pretty impressive for a 43-year-old car. One of the biggest selling points? No rust. That's a huge deal for a car of this vintage. It's also never been in a crash, which is always good to hear. The car comes with some nice features like power steering, power disc brakes up front with drums in the rear, and working air conditioning that's been upgraded to R134A. The stereo has been modernized with a classic-looking retro radio that includes Bluetooth and an AUX input, paired with new kicker speakers. Now, I've got to be honest, it's not 100% perfect. The carpet is showing its age, though the seller describes it as in good survivor condition. There's also a dent in the passenger side rocker molding, but it's stainless steel and could potentially be straightened out. Mechanically, it seems solid. The seller mentions new gas shocks all around, good tires, and that it passes California smog checks with ease. That's a good sign for its overall health. All in all, this 1978 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme seems like a fantastic find for anyone looking for a well-preserved piece of American automotive history. It's not a concours-level show car, but it's an exceptionally clean, original example that you could enjoy driving while still appreciating as a classic. So, what do you think? Is this the kind of time-warp classic that gets your heart racing? Would you cruise around town in this beautifully preserved piece of Oldsmobile history? 7. We're looking at a real gem, a 1983 Ford Mustang that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $9,500. This fox body pony is something special, so let's dive in. First off, we're dealing with a hatchback model powered by a 3.8L V6 engine paired with an automatic transmission. Now here's the kicker. This Mustang has only 50,000 kilometers on the clock, which is incredibly low for a car that's nearly 4 decades old. The seller describes this Mustang as excellent, and from the details provided, it's hard to argue with that assessment. This car is only on its second owner and boasts a clean history with no accidents. It's extremely original, right down to the factory paint. Sure, there are some minor imperfections and swirl marks in the 41-year-old paint, but that's to be expected. One of the biggest selling points? No rust. The body and undercarriage are described as solid, which is fantastic news for a car of this vintage. Inside, it's like stepping back in time. The original tweed seats are in remarkable shape, and the door panels, headliner, and carpeting are all described as being in terrific condition with no blemishes. Even the dash is crack-free, which is pretty rare for these old Mustangs. Mechanically, it sounds like this Fox body is in great shape. The engine has been professionally tuned to factory specs, with new ignition parts installed. The transmission shifts smoothly, the brakes are good, and it's riding on newer tires mounted on period-correct 16 rims. Now, I've got to be honest, it's not 100% perfect. The seller mentions that the driver's seat is leaned back a bit due to the original owner being a larger man. The temperature gauge is intermittent, and the horn isn't working at the moment. But for a 41-year-old car, these are minor issues. All in all, this 1983 Ford Mustang seems like an exceptional find for anyone looking for an original well-preserved Fox body. It's not a high-performance GT model, but it's an incredibly clean, low-mileage example that you could enjoy driving while still appreciating as a classic. 8. We're taking a look at a 1977 Chevrolet Nova that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $5,500. This yellow beauty is definitely an eye-catcher, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're dealing with a sedan model powered by a 6-cylinder engine paired with an automatic transmission. Now, here's something interesting. The odometer shows only 29,900 miles. That's incredibly low for a car that's over 4 decades old. The seller describes this Nova as being in like-new condition, and they're not shy about singing its praises. They claim the paint and body are as close to perfection as it gets, and that the interior is perfect down to the factory floor mats. That's pretty impressive for a 46-year-old car. Mechanically, the seller says it runs and drives great, and they've recently installed new brakes. That's always good to hear. Now, I've got to be honest with you folks. There's one detail that raises an eyebrow. The title status is listed as salvage. That's a bit of a red flag, especially for a car that's described as being in such great condition. It would be wise to ask the seller for more information about why the car has a salvage title. Another thing to consider is that while the seller describes the car as all original, they also mention that the paint is nearly perfect. For a 46-year-old car, that might suggest a repaint at some point, which wouldn't be unusual, but does conflict with the all-original claim. Despite these questions, this Nova does sound like an interesting find. These aren't as common as some other classic Chevys, so it could be a unique addition to any collection. All in all, this 1977 Chevrolet Nova seems like it could be a gem, but there are some questions that need answering. The low mileage and apparently excellent condition are definitely appealing, but the salvage title is a concern that shouldn't be overlooked. If you're interested in this Nova, I'd recommend asking for more details about its history, particularly regarding the salvage title and any restoration work that might have been done. And as always with classics, a thorough inspection would be wise before making a purchase. 9. We're taking a look at a 1978 Pontiac Grand Le Mans that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,000. This green machine is a bit of a time capsule, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're dealing with a sedan model powered by a 5.0-liter, 305 CID V8 engine with a 2-barrel carburetor paired with an automatic transmission. Now here's something impressive. The odometer shows only 59,000 original miles. That's remarkably low for a car that's over 4 decades old. The seller describes this Grand Le Mans as being in excellent condition, and there's a lot to back that up. The interior is a standout feature with pistachio green leather that's reportedly in pristine condition with no tears or cracks. That's pretty rare for a car of this vintage. Mechanically, the seller claims there are no problems, and that the car has been maintained and serviced regularly. The AC works, which is always a big plus in a classic, and so does the radio. It's also worth noting that it's smogged and registered through June 2025, so you won't have to worry about that for a while. Now, I've got to be honest with you folks. While the interior and mechanicals sound great, the exterior is showing its age a bit. The seller mentions that it's starting to see its age, mostly by being in the sun. This suggests there might be some fading or oxidation in the paint, which isn't unusual for a 45-year-old car, but it's something to keep in mind. On the plus side, this Pontiac has a great history. It was garage kept and only driven on weekends for many years after it was first purchased. The current seller is only the second owner, which often bodes well for a classic car's condition and maintenance history. All in all, this 1978 Pontiac Grand Le Mans seems like an interesting find. It's not perfect, but it sounds like a well-preserved example of a less common classic. The low mileage, working AC, and pristine interior are definite selling points, while the aging exterior might give you a chance to put your own stamp on the car if you decide to refresh the paint. So, what do you think? Does this green Grand Le Mans get your motor running? Would you cruise around town in this piece of Pontiac history, or does the sun-aged exterior make you hesitate? Remember, sometimes these less-than-perfect classics can be the most fun to own and improve. 10. We're looking at a 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass S convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $11,000. This blue beauty has some real potential, but let's be honest about what we're dealing with here. First off, we've got a V8-powered convertible with an automatic transmission and power steering. The odometer shows 58,000 miles, which isn't bad for a car that's over half a century old. The seller has owned this Cutlass for 35 years, which is a good sign. Long-term ownership often means a car has been well cared for. Now, here's where we need to get real. The seller describes the condition as good, but there's a big catch. It's not currently running. The culprit? A blown head gasket. That's not necessarily a deal breaker for the right buyer, but it's definitely something you need to factor into your decision and your budget. On the bright side, the seller mentions that the floor and frame are solid. That's crucial information for a convertible of this age, as rust can be a real killer for these classics. A solid foundation gives you a good starting point if you're looking to restore this Cutlass. The blue paint looks decent in the photos, but without more information, it's hard to say what kind of shape it's really in. Given the car's age and the fact it's been off the road for a while, it might need some attention. So, what are we looking at here? This 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass S convertible is essentially a project car. It's got good bones, a desirable model, a V8 engine, and a solid frame. But it needs work, starting with that head gasket, and probably a thorough going over of all its systems after sitting idle. For $11,000, you're buying potential. This could be a fantastic cruiser once it's fixed up, but you need to go into it with your eyes open. You're not getting a turnkey classic here. You're getting a project that will require time, money, and effort to get back on the road. What do you think, folks? Is this the kind of project you'd love to tackle? Can you see yourself cruising with the top down in this '69 Cutlass once it's running again? Or does the idea of starting with a non-running car make you hesitate? Remember, sometimes the most rewarding classics are the ones you bring back to life yourself. 11. We're checking out a real gem, a 1965 Ford Galaxy that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $12,500. This white beauty is a true piece of American automotive history, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're looking at a coupe model powered by a 352 Interceptor V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission. The seller reports that it has 81,000 miles on the clock, which isn't too bad for a car that's pushing 60 years old. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This Galaxy was stored in a dry garage for 27 years, but it wasn't just sitting there gathering dust. The owner started and ran it regularly, which is music to any classic car lover's ears. It's now being driven daily, which speaks volumes about its reliability. The seller describes the condition as good, and there's a lot to back that up. They claim the body is rust-free and has never been wrecked. That's huge for a car of this vintage. The interior is reportedly in great condition, including the carpet. Even the radio works, though it needs a new speaker. Mechanically, things sound pretty solid. The 352 Interceptor motor is said to run great, and the automatic transmission shifts well. That's encouraging to hear, especially for a car that's been around for nearly 6 decades. One cool detail is that it comes with the original wheels and hubcaps in great shape. The seller is even offering a $500 discount if you prefer the stock wheels over the current set. Now, I've got to be honest, it's not perfect. The radio needs a speaker, and there might be other small issues that come with a car of this age. But overall, this Galaxy seems to be in remarkably good condition for its age. All in all, this 1965 Ford Galaxy looks like a fantastic find for anyone looking for a classic American car from the mid-60s. It's not a concours-level show car, but it seems to be a well-preserved, drivable classic that you could enjoy on the road while still appreciating its historical value. So, what do you think? Does this 65 Galaxy get your motor running? Can you see yourself cruising down the strip in this piece of Ford history? At $2,500, it could be a great entry point into classic car ownership. 12. We're taking a look at a real gem, a 1979 Lincoln Continental Mark V that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,175. This white beauty is a true testament to late 70s American luxury, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're looking at a rear-wheel drive behemoth powered by a V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission. Now, here's the kicker. This Continental has only 43,000 original miles on the clock. That's incredibly low for a car that's over 4 decades old. The seller describes this Lincoln as beautiful and in great condition. And from the details provided, it's hard to argue with that assessment. They claim the paint and body are in great original condition with no rust. That's pretty impressive for a car of this vintage, especially considering how prone these big luxury cars were to rust issues. One of the standout features is the power sunroof, which was quite a luxury item back in 1979. The seller mentions that everything power works, which is great news because these cars came loaded with power accessories. Mechanically, the seller says it runs and drives great. That's always good to hear, especially for a car with relatively low mileage that might have spent long periods sitting. Another cool detail is that it comes with the original California blue plates and a clean California title. For collectors, especially those in California, this is a nice bonus. Now, I've got to be honest, while the seller's description is overwhelmingly positive, it's always wise to inspect a classic car in person before making a purchase. The seller even encourages this, saying you must see in person to appreciate it. All in all, this 1979 Lincoln Continental Mark V seems like an exceptional find for anyone looking for a well-preserved piece of American luxury car history. It's not a high-performance sports car, but it's an incredibly clean, low-mileage example of what was once the pinnacle of American automotive opulence. So, what do you think? Does this Continental get your heart racing? Can you see yourself cruising down the boulevard in this land yacht, enjoying all that 70s luxury? At $8,175, it could be a great way to step into the world of classic luxury cars. Remember, they don't make them like this anymore. 13. We're taking a look at a 1973 Plymouth Duster that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,000. This white beauty is a bit of a project, but it's got some serious potential, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're looking at a coupe model that's been given some serious muscle. The original engine has been swapped out for a 1970 V8 340, which is paired with a 727 automatic transmission. That's a potent combination that should give this Duster some serious get up and go. Now, the seller lists the condition as good, but let's be real here. This is a project car. The odometer is broken, so the 39,000 miles listed might not be accurate. The interior has been partially redone with new buckets, headliner, and kick panels. But the carpet and rubbers still need to be installed. The car has been taken apart for painting, so there's still some assembly required. On the plus side, there's been a lot of work done to this Duster. The suspension has been upgraded with Mopar Superstock springs and torsion bars, all with rebuilt bushings, tie rods, and gas shocks. It's got manual disc brakes and manual steering, which purists often prefer. The rear end is an 8-3-4 Posey, which is great for putting the power down. Cosmetically, there's been some attention to detail. The bumpers have been straightened and re-chromed, and the taillights have been refinished. New marker lights are included but need to be installed. The tires are reportedly like new, only a couple of years old, and mounted on nice rims. Now, I've got to be honest, while a lot of work has been done, there's still more to do. This isn't a turnkey classic you can just hop in and drive. It needs some finishing touches and probably a good once-over to make sure everything's ship-shape after the partial reassembly. All in all, this 1973 Plymouth Duster looks like a great starting point for someone who wants a classic Mopar with some muscle. It's not perfect, but it's got good bones and a lot of the hard work has already been done. At $8,000, it could be a good value for the right buyer who's willing to put in some elbow grease to finish it up. So, what do you think? Does this Duster project get your motor running? Can you see yourself putting the finishing touches on this piece of Mopar history and then tearing up the streets? Remember, sometimes the most rewarding classics are the ones you help bring back to life yourself. 14. We're taking a look at a real head-turner. A 1963 Ford Fairlane 500 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $15,000. This white beauty has a unique history and some interesting modifications, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're looking at a sedan model powered by the original 260 V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission. The odometer shows 62,000 miles, which isn't bad for a car that's pushing 60 years old. Now here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just any Fairlane. It's a themed show car from Frankie Fairlane's Lee Summit restaurant. That explains the attention-grabbing white wrap over the original blue paint. It's definitely a conversation starter. The seller describes the condition as good, and there's a lot to back that up. They claim the frame, floors, rocker panels, quarter panels, and front fenders are all super solid. That's crucial for a car of this vintage. The interior is reportedly in excellent original condition, which is pretty impressive for a 60-year-old car. Mechanically, it sounds like this Fairlane has had some recent work done. We're talking new shocks, fuel pump, gas tank, master cylinder, wheel cylinders, and radiator. It's also got power steering and air conditioning, which are nice creature comforts in a classic. One of the standout features is the sound. It's running dual 18-inch glass packs, which I'm sure give it a nice rumble. It's sitting on Hoosier Pro Street tires, which give it a bit of a hot rod look. Now, I've got to be honest. While this Fairlane sounds like it's in great shape, it's not exactly original anymore. The white wrap, while eye-catching, is covering up the original paint. And those Pro Street tires aren't what it would have come with from the factory. But for some buyers, these modifications might be exactly what they're looking for. All in all, this 1963 Ford Fairlane 500 seems like a unique find. It's not a numbers-matching all-original collector's piece, but it's a well-maintained classic with some interesting modifications and a cool backstory. At $15,000, it could be a fun way to get into the classic car scene, especially if you're looking for something that stands out from the crowd. So, what do you think? Does this show car Fairlane get your motor running? Can you see yourself cruising to car shows in this piece of restaurant history? Remember, sometimes the most interesting classics are the ones with a story to tell. 15. We're taking a look at a real gem, a 1964 Chevrolet Corvair convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $10,750. This little beauty is a unique piece of American automotive history, so let's dive into the details. First off, we're looking at a rear-engine, rear-wheel drive convertible powered by a 6-cylinder engine, paired with a manual transmission. The odometer shows 51,741 miles, which the seller believes to be original. That's pretty low for a car that's nearly 60 years old. Now, the seller describes this Corvair as being in excellent condition. But let's be real here. It's not perfect, and the seller is refreshingly honest about that. This car spent most of its life in Southern California before moving to Montana in 2020, which explains its generally good condition. The good news is that it's very original with no modifications. It runs and drives well for its age, and the seller has only had to replace a fuse and the battery in 4 years of ownership. That's pretty impressive reliability for a classic. The paint looks good and shiny, but it's not the original color. All the glass and trim are in very good condition, as are the brakes and tires. The floor pans have some surface pitting, but are solid, which is crucial for a car of this vintage. Now, let's talk about the not-so-perfect aspects. There are a few rust spots and blemishes, which is typical for an unrestored Corvair. The dash has the typical center crack, and the jack and spare tire are missing. Also, if you're tall, getting in and out might be a bit of a challenge with the top up. The seller is upfront that this isn't a show car but rather a fun driver, and isn't that what classic car ownership is all about? All in all, this 1964 Chevrolet Corvair convertible seems like a great find for someone looking for a unique, driver-quality classic. It's not perfect, but it's honest, and it sounds like it's ready to hit the road and turn some heads. So, what do you think? Does this quirky Corvair get your motor running? Can you see yourself cruising with the top down in this piece of GM history? At $10,750, it could be a fun and relatively affordable way to get into classic car ownership. Remember, they don't make them like this anymore. 16. We're diving into a real gem on Craigslist, a 1964 Ford Thunderbird that's currently up for grabs at $11,000. Let me tell you, this classic beauty is turning heads for all the right reasons. First off, we're looking at a clean title and an odometer reading of just 47,345 miles. That's pretty impressive for a car pushing 60 years old. Under the hood, you've got a beefy 8-cylinder engine paired with an automatic transmission, giving you that smooth, powerful ride that T-Birds are known for. Now let's talk about that exterior. It's rocking a stunning brown paint job with gold metal flake. I mean, talk about eye-catching. This isn't just a car. It's a statement piece. You could roll up to a fancy event or a car show, and you'd be the talk of the town either way. The seller's been upfront about the condition, rating it as good, and from what I can see, they're not exaggerating. They've made some smart upgrades too, like a new aluminum radiator, made in the USA no less, and fresh tires. That's the kind of maintenance you want to see in a classic like this. Inside, it's a blast from the past in the best way possible. The interior is all original and in fantastic shape for its age. No tears or rips to be found. It's like stepping into a time machine, folks. Now I've got to be real with you. At this price point and in this condition, this T-Bird is a solid investment. You could drive it as is and have a fantastic time. Or if you're feeling ambitious, there's potential to really make it shine with some additional TLC. Bottom line, whether you're looking for a fun weekend cruiser, a showstopper, or a smart investment against inflation, this 64 Thunderbird ticks all the boxes. It's a piece of American automotive history that you can own and enjoy. Just remember, with classics like these, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before making the leap. 17. We're checking out a real gem on Craigslist, a 1968 Ford Ranchero that's up for grabs at $13,800. Let me tell you, this classic beauty is turning heads and making some serious noise. First off, we're looking at a clean title California car with an odometer reading of just 1,000 miles. Now that's likely after a reset, but it's still impressive. Under the hood, you've got a beefy V8 engine that, according to the seller, sounds great. It's paired with an automatic transmission for smooth cruising, and it's got power steering to make handling a breeze. The exterior is sporting a eye-catching red paint job that's sure to turn heads wherever you go. This isn't just a car, it's a conversation starter on wheels. Now let's talk about the condition. The seller's been upfront about the recent work done, and it's impressive. We're talking a freshly redone 4-barrel carburetor, new fluids, a recent tune-up, good tires, and a new battery. They've even upgraded to front disc brakes for better stopping power. All lights and wipers are in good working order, which is always a plus in a classic like this. Inside, you've got a working heater and defrost, but no AC, something to keep in mind if you're in a hot climate. The seller mentions it's a reliable daily driver, which is a big deal for a classic vehicle. Now, I've got to be real with you. At this price point, and with this level of recent maintenance, this Ranchero seems like a solid buy. The seller mentions that other Rancheros at this price are in much worse shape, and they're not entertaining low-ball offers. Bottom line, whether you're looking for a unique daily driver, a weekend cruiser, or a cool project car, This '68 Ranchero checks a lot of boxes. It's a piece of American automotive history that combines car comfort with truck utility. Just remember, with classics like these, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before making the leap. Onsen 18. We're diving into a real piece of American automotive history, a 1974 Oldsmobile Delta 88 convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $2,500. Now let me be straight with you, this isn't a pristine show car, but it's got character for days. First off, we're looking at a clean title with an odometer reading of 64,555 miles. Under the hood, you've got the classic 350 cubic inch V8 paired with an automatic transmission. The seller says it runs and drives well, which is always good to hear for a car of this vintage. Now let's talk about the condition. And I'm going to be real with you here. This old girl has seen better days, but she's still got some fight left in her. The seller's been upfront about the issues, and there are quite a few. The convertible top won't go up and down, which is a bummer for a convertible. The AC isn't working, but hey, at least the heater does. A few of the back windows don't roll up, so that might be an issue depending on where you live. The biggest concern is the heavy rust around the wheel wells. That's something you'll definitely want to check out in person, as rust can be a real deal breaker on these old cars. The paint is faded on top, which is pretty common for a convertible of this age. On the plus side, it's got some recent maintenance done. We're talking a new radiator, new plugs and wires, and good brakes. The tires are reportedly in great shape too, which is always a bonus. Look, this Delta 88 isn't going to win any beauty contests, but at $2,500, it could be a fun project car or a cool beach cruiser. The seller mentions it gets lots of thumbs up, and I can believe it. These old land yachts have a certain charm that's hard to resist. Bottom line, if you're looking for a piece of 70s Americana and you're not afraid of a little or a lot of work, this could be your ticket. Just be prepared for some serious elbow grease to get it back into shape. And as always, with classics like these, a thorough inspection is a must before you hand over any cash. Remember, folks, sometimes the most rewarding projects are the ones that need a little love. 19. All right, let's dive deeper into this 1973 Chevrolet Nova Custom that's currently up for sale on Craigslist for $14,000. This isn't just any old car, it's a piece of American automotive history that's managed to stand the test of time. With only 66,000 miles on the odometer, this Nova has clearly been cherished and well maintained over the years. The seller describes the condition as excellent, and based on the information provided, I'm inclined to believe them. The classic Chevy green paint gives it that authentic vintage look that's hard to replicate. Under the hood, you'll find a robust V8 engine, which was the powerhouse of choice for many muscle car enthusiasts back in the day. Paired with an automatic transmission, it promises a smooth ride with plenty of power when you need it. One of the interesting aspects of this particular Nova is that it's a hatchback model, which adds a level of practicality you don't often see in classic cars. The rear-wheel drive configuration is true to its roots, offering that classic driving feel that many modern cars have lost. Inside, the Nova is said to be clean and comfortable. It comes equipped with power steering and power brakes, which were considered luxury features in 1973. These additions make the car more drivable by today's standards while maintaining its vintage charm. The clean title status is another plus point, suggesting this Nova hasn't been in any major accidents or had any legal issues. For collectors and enthusiasts, this is crucial information that adds to the car's value and desirability. Now, I always aim to be transparent with you all. If there were any glaring issues or if the car was in poor condition, I'd make sure to point that out. However, based on the seller's description and the details provided, this Nova seems to be in remarkably good shape for its age. Of course, with any classic car purchase, it's always recommended to see the vehicle in person and, if possible, get a professional inspection before making a decision. While $14,000 might seem steep to some, for a well-maintained classic in excellent condition, it could be a fair price in today's market. This 1973 Chevy Nova Custom represents more than just transportation. It's a rolling time capsule that captures the spirit of early 70s American car design. For the right buyer, it could be a fantastic addition to a collection or a thrilling weekend driver that turns heads wherever it goes. If you're in the market for a classic that combines vintage appeal with a touch of practicality, this Nova certainly deserves a closer look. 20. We're diving into a real blast from the past, a 1978 Ford Fairmont that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $3,500. Now I know what you're thinking, a Fairmont? Really? But hear me out, because this little slice of automotive history might just surprise you. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller claims it's in good shape, and with only 67,000 miles on the clock, it's barely broken in for a car of this vintage. They're saying it runs and drives nice, which is always music to our ears when we're talking about a car that's over 4 decades old. Under the hood, we've got a 6-cylinder engine. It's not going to win you any drag races, but it should provide reliable, efficient transportation. Plus, it's paired with an automatic transmission, so you can cruise in comfort without worrying about shifting gears. Now let's talk about that color, yellow. It's bold, it's bright, and it's definitely going to turn some heads. Whether that's a good thing or not, well, that's up to you. But one thing's for sure, you won't lose this car in a parking lot. The Fairmont is a rear-wheel drive sedan, which gives it a bit of that classic American car feel. It's got a clean title, so no worries about any hidden history there. The seller mentions that the tires and battery are in good condition, which is always a plus. It means you won't have to immediately sink more money into it after purchase. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is some kind of hidden gem or a future collector's item. The Ford Fairmont was a pretty basic no-frills car even when it was new. But for $3,500, you're getting a piece of automotive history that's still capable of getting you from point A to point B. It could be a great project car, a unique daily driver, or even just a conversation starter. As always, I recommend seeing the car in person and maybe getting a mechanic to look it over before you commit. But if you're in the market for something different, something that'll stand out from the sea of modern crossovers and SUVs, this 1978 Ford Fairmont might just be worth a look. Just don't expect it to be anything more than what it is. An honest, straightforward car from a simpler time in automotive history.